Hey, right now we're going to get into the electric docudrama. You guys, they get behind me, you lollygag, you told me you'd have this ready, and I appreciate you, but let's go, please, let's get it done. We'll get to it as soon as they get ready.
Everybody would get out here. We gotta have engineers. We gotta have everybody out here. Get linemen out here. Everybody. We got 3 men down. We need people out here now. You gotta hurry.
Dispatch, Cox and EMS right on scene. We're here out at the scene. Willard, Engine 2, upon your arrival, I believe you're going to assist with EMS. We're going to check for scene safety.
Hey, we've got 2 guys over here.
Is it secure to enter?
Still hot.
Still hot.
I need sub 15 feet or 1 open. I repeat, I need sub 15 feet or 1 open. Okay, say it's open. I got the test it. Tag number 121. Thank you. I'll call you back. EMS is on the scene. Next, let me get this tested. Okay, Jason, it's open.
Is it secure?
Yeah.
We're good to go. Dispatch from Cox EMS. Appear that we have 3 casualties. 1 still hanging. CE is working on that. Dispatch Cox EMS. We have 1 black patient, 1 red patient. All right, let's go ahead and roll. Get a link on this. You guys ready to move? 3, 2, 1.
Hey, we need some help down here. You okay?
Now, if you want to go get this one loaded, if you can check on that person. You go ahead and raise it up. Grab that red bag if you want.
Good.
Fire, if you would get some sheets, we'll cover them up and wait for the corner. Dispatch Cox EMS. Be advised we have 2 DOAs, 1 red patient. Will be transported shortly. We'll go ahead and start back in, hook him up, continue CPR.
Okay, so what did we just witness here? We had a crew working, obviously something went wrong. We ended up with 2 guys dead, 1 severely injured. So I'm going to give these guys a minute to kind of get regrouped. We're going to go through this again. I'm going to speak through the whole process of what ended up happening here. All right, we set and ready? Let me kind of set the scene for you. So what we got, this is a Friday afternoon, middle of summer. We got a 4-man crew out here. These guys are all great friends. They're getting ready to go to the lake. They got a big fishing trip planned this weekend. They got this one last job they got to finish. What they're doing is they're pulling a communication line in. So they had a few spans over here. They got that all done. First thing this morning, everything went fine. This is their last little part. You turn the corner here, they got 1 more span they got to get up. So what I've got is Tyler up here. He's up in the bucket truck. He's got his line here. We've got Jason on the pole down here. He just landed the communication line down here. So he's going to finish buttoning everything up here. We've got Skylar's down here at the trailer watching that reel. And Bailey is going to be our lead man. He's doing all the paperwork and stuff. He's off to the side right now. So if you want to go ahead and get started here. Boom. So what happens is he was working underneath a 3-phase line. This is an energized three-phase line. So 7,200 volts phase to ground, 12,470 volts phase to phase. That communication line is a conductor. So what happened was as soon as he got into that, it energized this line, which went down here and got to my guy that's on the pole, which killed him instantly. I had Skylar down here on this trailer. He's supposed to be watching the reel, watching what's going on. He's busy over here looking at TikToks or whatever he's doing, not paying attention, but he's leaning against that trailer. So he is another path to ground. So that 7,200 volts went through his body. He's dead instantly. Our lead man comes running up here to check on his buddy. And down he's gonna go. So, whether he touched that line or not, let's say that he did not touch that line. So what happened was this guy was a positive contact to ground. This guy over here was a contact to ground that was leaning on the trailer. But when Bailey comes running up there, he didn't touch anything. All this stuff is energized, but he didn't quite touch it. So how did he end up dropping dead or getting severely injured? So what happened is, if you can see these Christmas lights around that trailer, that is supposed to represent step potential. So we'll talk more about step potential here in just a little bit, but what happens is when you have a line that becomes energized and it goes to ground, if that is not a good enough path to ground to blow a fuse or a circuit breaker or something like that, it will stay energized. So that trailer, this line, everything was energized, and what happens is you have like these rings of power that dissipates out from where that landed. So, if we would have several rings around here, as he come walking up to that or running up trying to help his buddy out, if he's stepping across a couple different of those rings of power, that is voltage going across his body. So, he may not get the full 7,200 volts like the other guys got. It might be 1,000 volts, couple thousand volts, whatever it is. Depends on all the conditions, how wet the ground is, all kinds of things, how good his rubber boots are. But as he comes running up in there, it ends up dropping him to the ground. So he's injured immediately. So what about Tyler up here in the air? He's the only one that did not get hurt from this whole situation. He's the one that flipped it up in the air in the first place. He had a hold of that wire. So how did he not get injured? Well, the reason he's not injured is because he's like a bird on a wire. So you guys have all seen birds on power lines all the time. They are not getting shocked or electrocuted or injured at all, as long as you're only touching one conductor at one time. So all you have to realize is that voltage is a difference of potential between two different points. That's why all of our voltmeters have two leads on them. You can't put one lead on a wire and read a voltage on it. You have to read across two different things. So him being essentially a bird on the wire, because his bucket truck that he has is an insulated bucket, insulated boom, so he has no path to ground. This guy is standing on a pole, that's a path to ground. This guy is standing on the ground, that's a path to ground. The step potential, there's ground and some voltage going across him, but he had no difference of potential, so no voltage going across his body at all. So he's perfectly safe from the whole thing. Okay. So, when that happened, this all becomes energized. So after everybody is down, he's calling 911, he's calling for another crew to come down here because this guy's hanging off the pole. We got a guy dead and possibly a second guy dead over here. So that's when all of our emergency crews come in, the paramedics. We had another line crew that comes in, and the line crew's job was they needed to make sure that the scene is safe before those paramedics could come in here. I don't know if you heard them ask, but they were asking if things were de-energized, if it was safe to come into this zone, and at first it was not. It was still energized, so we did need a paramedic to go down also, then we have more problems. So the lineman comes in here, he checks things, he calls another guy down the street, he's opening up fuses, whatever he's got to do to be able to de-energize that line. Once it becomes de-energized, Clifford, I knew I'd get you. So once this becomes de-energized, then it's safe for everybody to come in and start doing their job. So now the paramedics come running in, they check on everybody, they announce this guy, one of them dead immediately. The lineman's over here getting this guy down. Once they check him, he's also dead. And the only one that was going to survive this that got injured was Bailey, because he got the step potential, but he did not get the full 7,200 volts going across his body. So he's going to end up living through this and he's going to be okay. Tyler, up in the air, did not sustain any injuries at all, but he is going to have to live with this on his conscience for the rest of his life now. So this is something that can very well happen at any point. So we ended up having our coroner here come in at the very end, and if you saw, he was taking pictures and documenting and all that kind of stuff. So did you want to speak on this for a second?
Yeah, here's the deal, folks. Obviously, this is a very, very serious situation, right? We had 2 people die here. When the fire and EMS gets involved, there's steps that's involved with the fire and EMS that they have to do so we don't become a casualty as well. They come in, they ask the guys if it was safe, like Sean said. They make sure the scene was safe before they come in and do their work. As soon as they can do their work, they grab the patient. Had that line still been charged, that guy's going to lay there until it's safe because they're not going to touch it, right? Then you heard them call out a code black. That, in the EMS terms, that's a fatality. Some people call it code blacks, some people call them J4s, some signal 96s, whatever. That's the terminology that's used. So when we get called in as a coroner, and by the way, I am actually a county coroner in the county that I live in, we will come in and we take photos of everything. I go to the witnesses, the guys in the boxes, up in the buckets. I go to the witnesses, I get statements from everybody. I actually lock them into a statement. Even though this is a workplace injury, me as a coroner, I treat it as a homicide until I prove that it's not a homicide. Okay? Every single death gets treated as a homicide until it's proven that it's not. So I have to get locked in statements from the people that seen what happened. I need to find out exactly what happened. I come in and you see me taking photos. of the individual. Truth be known, had that been an injury like that out on the scene, I'd have cut all his clothes off of him. And I'd have took photos of everything. Seen where the exit marks were from the burns. I'd have seen had photos of the entrance, the exits, any burn marks, any trauma that was done to this individual to document my case, right? And then I pronounce them, what time it was that it actually happened. That is their time of death for both individuals. Once we do that and we're done with our scene, then the fun part starts. And that's next of kin notification. That is probably the worst job in the world, to have to go to somebody's house or make a phone call to somebody and let them know that their loved ones died because of a workplace injury. So just be aware of that just because something happened on the scene or whatever like that, when the coroner's office gets involved, it takes it to a whole new level, right? Not only is the coroner's office gets involved, OSHA's going to get involved, everybody's going to get involved. And then the person, because it is a workplace injury, it's automatically considered an autopsy. They go for an autopsy and they find out exactly what happened, and it's going to be pretty obvious what happens. When I send people down for an autopsy, I have to tell them, you know, what my predetermined cause of manner of death was, my circumstances, their medical histories, everything else like that for this autopsy, because that all plays a factor into it whenever somebody dies. And then they start doing the autopsy, and they follow that path to see everything that was damaged inside the body, let alone outside the body. So that's about all I got on that.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is, this is only one part of the whole electrical demonstration that we're going to have. So I'm going to give these guys a couple minutes. You need to get down if we need to get any trucks out of here and stuff. But first of all, I want to thank the linemen, the paramedics, the coroner, everybody that was involved in this. Please give them a big round of applause. So what we'll end up doing next is, once Tim and his guys are ready to go, your focus is going to be on this trailer and that screen up here. So, like I said, we'll give them just a minute or two to get all this stuff down, get Jason down off the pole, get their trucks out, what they have to do. Then I'm going to be handing this over to Tim Boswell. My name is Sean Spiewak. I'm with Evergy. Thank you for listening to me. It's all you, Tim.
Great job, everybody. Absolutely excellent job. Folks, I want you to realize and wrap your head around what they just did was an actual event that occurred not too far from here. And it happened to real people like you, and you, and you, and you, and me. And the thing of it is we suffer fatalities and injuries and property damage every day across this U.S. because we take shortcuts, and because simply we do just not know what the hazards are. But I'm going to tell you, as a person in my position, when we investigate these accidents, largely it's because production and profit overrule safety. As a direct result of that, the things that we know we are to put in place to protect us and our crews that cost money, we don't no longer put in place. And the other thing I'm going to tell you and this occurs to you people too, because I see a lot of experience in this room, is that as we work around these assets and we understand the hazard, the absence of anything bad happening to us over time must mean it's safe to do. And in many times it's not. We're going to take a journey right now, and I'd like for you to come with me. We're going to cover the United States and maybe even take a trip around the world. We have, according to TD World, over 500,000 miles of transmission lines crossing the United States. Folks, I said 500,000 miles of transmission that goes from our 6,000 power plants across the U.S. and lands in 55,000 different substations. And from those substations spur out and spring out, listen, 5.5 million miles of distribution line. Just exactly what you're seeing right there. Folks, 5.5 million miles of distribution line. According to TD World, 18% of that is in the ground, or 990,000 miles of underground distribution. So that must mean that if there's 990,000 miles in the ground, there must be 4.6 million miles of distribution lines spread across the United States in the air. And people like you and me have to perform work around them every day. Years ago, OSHA said because we kept creating property damage, because we kept hurting people, and because we kept killing people, we must now adopt laws that tell you and I how to work safely around them. And you know, the federal government does a good job of telling us how to do our work, but the thing of it was the states didn't want to miss out on that. And the states, 44 of them to be exact, wrote statutes that follow federal law, but they put their own numbers and their own language in it and made it their own. Now, there's only 4 states in the continental U.S. that operate under what they call regulatory authority. And that's actually the state's corporation commissions who write articles, and they have the jurisdiction and the enforcement of those laws. Both of those follow federal law. And I'm going to share something with you. If you direct your attention at the top of the screen. Guys, can you go to the PowerPoint for me, please? I'm going to talk to you today about the call to action. And here's the deal. If you are a VP in this room, if you're a director in this room, if you're a manager, a supervisor, a foreman, or a lead person, or quite honestly, you're just an employee, you're not exempt from that call to action. Because we are in Missouri, folks, we are going to talk about Missouri Chapter 319. So folks, if you have a name, you're a person. If you have a social security number, you're an individual. And if you have a job, you're an employee. And I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of states consider after an event, okay, after an event, even when you are off duty, if you work for a company or a corporation, you're considered an agent or a representative of that corporation or that company. So again, we pretty much covered all 4, right, that are sitting in this auditorium right now. And what it says is, you have a call to action. If you guys are going to be performing any work around these overhead power lines, folks, you cannot. In fact, it says you shall not store, operate, erect, maintain, move, transport any machinery, equipment, supplies within what? 10 feet of an overhead high voltage power line. Now, the majority of you in this room have heard that 10-foot rule before. Multiple times. But again, a person in my position, when we investigate these accidents, I'm going to tell you, it becomes very clear what the culture is of that organization when you start interviewing employees. What do you mean, Tim? It was 3 feet on Wednesday, 7 feet on Thursday, but Saturday, because we were behind work, it was as close as we needed to get the job done. And then you and I wonder why we have accidents. Folks, that law says that if you're not a qualified worker, you have a call to action. You have to understand that that 10 feet is your minimum approach distance to these overhead lines. Listen to me. That is my body to that conductor 10 feet. That's the extension of my reach to that conductor 10 feet. That's the extension of any tool toward that conductor 10 feet. And certainly any piece of equipment that extends, rotates, pivots in the air 10 feet. That law says that we constantly have to maintain our relationship to that hazard, even if we have to move our equipment. Now, folks, that law goes on to say this, though. What is high voltage? Many of you in the room know that answer, but OSHA says anything over 600 volts is considered high voltage. So that must mean that anything under 600 volts is considered medium and or low voltage. What I'm going to tell you is that low voltage, that's that 270, 480 that we use in three-phase installations, motor-controlled circuits, SUS units, switch gears. Listen to me. That voltage right there is responsible for the majority of electrical burns in the continental U.S. every year. That voltage right there. That low voltage that you see doesn't mean low hazard. The 120, the 240 that comes into your wall socket in your home, listen to me, folks. That is responsible for more deaths in the continental U.S. every year. We find them in basements, we find them in crawl spaces, we find them in attic spaces, we find them in the garage. So from our perspective, that low voltage doesn't mean low hazard. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is this. The difference is high voltage can kill you, but you know what it does a much better job of? Burning the living crap out of you and causing lifelong alteration and or physical disability. You know what low voltage does? If that current crosses your chest cavity, it's going to knock out the natural pacemaker in your heart. Folks, you're just DRT unless somebody's there to intervene. What does DRT stand for? Dead right there. With that being said, I'm also going to tell you this. Those clearance distances, OSHA is pretty specific about. It says that for distribution of less than 50,000 volts, there's that 10-foot rule. Never changes. For 50 volts to 200 kV, 200,000 volts, 15 feet. For 200,000 volts to 345 and above, folks, it goes on to 20 feet and keeps going. Now, that law goes on to say this, that if you're going to be working around transmission lines specifically, you can't see it, taste it, or smell it. But there are electromagnetic static rings around every one of those conductors. And if you're operating equipment in proximity to those transmission lines, folks, you're going to get what we call induced voltage. Voltage that is higher always is looking to go to low voltage that is lower or to lower grade or lower ground, right? So if I'm operating equipment inside 30 to 40 feet of those transmission lines, I'm going to be getting induction of that electromagnetic field. So every time that I get on and off that piece of equipment, I'm getting the crap kicked out of me. And we got example after example after example to share with you about that. So what we tell people that if you've got to be working around these things and have to get on and off that equipment, if you can, back out of that field in your equipment. Get out of that electromagnetic field. If you can't, you should be grounding that piece of equipment. So every time that you're stepping onto and off of that piece of equipment, you're not getting shocked. Now, are burns bad? You answer that question. And it may be hard for you to do that if you've not had an experience, but most of us know people or friends, and certainly Sean is a witness, that burns, electrical burns, are bad. They tell us that over 500,000 burns occur annually in the United States. But of those 500,000 burns, only 4% of them are actually a result of electrical burns, or 20,000. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But I'm also going to tell you this, that when we work around these overhead power lines on an annual basis, there's over 2,500 overhead strikes, what we call contacts. And I'm going to tell you a large number of that 20,000 burns outside of medium voltage is caused by those strikes. And as a result of that, 165 to 200 annually die. You just witnessed that in the docudrama. It's extremely unforgiving. And many times it doesn't give you a second chance after contact. Now, I'm going to direct your attention to this video. Look at the top left-hand side of this video. You will see a wand from a concrete float. Okay? You see the wand? Yes or no? All right, pay attention to that wand. Let's see what happens. Maybe. Watch.
Oh, shit.
He was a direct path to ground. Did you see any cover on that line? Did you see any signs down there that says caution, warning, overhead hazard? No. Folks, if you don't see any cover up on those lines, chances are they didn't notify the utility who owns those lines. First two bullets of the state statute in Missouri. So if you go on, look at this, another contact. Now again, 2,500 of these occur every year, folks. And again, what I'm going to tell you, as long as that mini hoe is in contact with that overhead line, if the protective devices on those circuits do not open up, recognizing that fault current, it's going to continue to eat and destroy whatever's in contact with it until either that line burns down or those protective devices open up. And that's either the fuse on the circuit or the breaker that's feeding that circuit. With that, I'm going to tell you there isn't any of you in this room that want to recover from these types of injuries. High voltage strikes are extremely devastating to human tissue. And again, you know of people, it's not going to give you a second chance. Now, my job isn't here to show you a bunch of gory pictures. My job is to say we have a call to action. And that call to action is that when we are engineering, planning, scheduling, making sure that we have the right resources to work around these overhead power lines, we are to notify the utility who owns them. That is the law. If you're not currently doing that, you're breaking the law if you're working within proximity to these lines. Simple as that. And what that says is that there's lots of things that we can do to make it safe for you folks to operate. If there's only a few customers on that line, we can schedule that outage, we can drop those lines, pull a jumper, open the fuse up, whatever. But based on customers that are on that circuit and load, especially if there's critical infrastructure, servers, life support, we have to make provisions for those customers. So at a minimum, we'll offer you up those barriers, which you will see here in a little bit on the trailer. This is a good example of what that looks like. And again, it is much larger in diameter than the conductor itself. It's high vis, and it allows us to judge our relationship to that hazard so that we can maintain those clearance distances. There's another good example. Another good example. And the thing I think, the point that I want to make to you all is this. These are our linemen. Notice they use that cover-up. And they use that cover-up because they understand electrical potentials. To illustrate that to you, I'd like to do this. These guys are in the air and they're working on an energized conductor. If they're completely isolated from everything else, they're at one electrical potential. They're the bird on the wire, right? The moment that they have brush contact or touch something else of a different electrical potential, it now allows current to flow through them. So, everything in the air that they do not want to touch, they cover up with this insulating material that should they have incidental brush contact, it will stop the flow of those electrons, protecting them, their equipment, and the ground crew as well. With that, I'm going to tell you 2 more paragraphs to share with you, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. The call to action, folks, is this. If you have a large project and you're bringing all kinds of people, material, and supplies and equipment into a job site, and you're going to have exposure to these overhead lines, the law says you're supposed to erect a sign, legible at least 12 feet away, warning everybody coming into this job site that you have an overhead hazard. And if you're not doing that, and you're working around these lines with a lot of people, material, supplies, and equipment, you're breaking the law. That call to action is to minimize those risks, those injuries, and those fatalities, and you can do that in these 3 or 4 paragraphs. Here, I want to share with this right here. Those signs are simple to get, they don't cost a lot of money, and yet, because they're high vis, they trigger my peripheral vision, they trigger my focus, my travel path. So I'm going to tell you that these things right here save lives. And all they are is a sign. And it's also the law. Last one I'm going to share with you is this. Technology is changing. And as technology changes, they are making low-weight, very cheap devices that, again, are high-vis, and they move. And when they move, again, it triggers our focus. It triggers our peripheral vision. If you think about what triggers your peripheral vision when you're driving down the road, it's light, color, and motion. So if I can put things on these lines that are moving and are high-vis, then that's more than likely going to trigger your attention that you have an overhead hazard. Don't be lifting your traco, your backhoe, or your transport bed, because if you do, you're going to have potential contact. And again, these things are becoming available across the country right now, and it triggers our attention. With that, last paragraph I want to share with you. Notice that in the state statute it says whoever violates any provision of this act is subject to a Class B misdemeanor and civil penalty. Now, nobody cares about a civil or a Class B misdemeanor. But I'm going to tell you that in my last 15 years' experience in investigating these accidents, we've seen some of these companies get fined not just tens of thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, but in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm going to say it again, hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? That law was not put in there for somebody who accidentally knocks down our power lines. That law was put in there for, take a look, repeat offenders. These are people who do property damage. These are people who hurt people, right? They create injuries. These are individuals and companies who kill people, and they're repeat offenders. And these judges are having little mercy for these people because they don't get it. Profit and production trump safety. And instead of integrating safety in with every aspect of their jobs, they're continuing to knock lines down and hurting people. So with that, I'm going to tell you that if you currently have ever done this, or if it is an acceptable practice amongst your organization to do this, you might as well put a gun to your head and start pulling the trigger. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it happens. Because this right here will result in an accident. With that being said, folks, I want to direct your attention to the right side of the screen. You see the gentleman's face that's in the circle? Right above that, there are two people in that slide. Let's watch what happens. What happened when the docudrama is exactly what happened right there to Bailey when he walked in to check on his co-worker. Bailey walked into that voltage gradient. That they then are in step potential. And just like when you touch two different potentials, current flows, it's no different than walking through this voltage gradient I'm standing in. You just witnessed that from a lightning strike. Now you're thinking, well, how does that happen? Folks, voltage is pressure. Voltage is pressure. The higher the voltage, the higher the pressure. If you got voltage on these lines and those lines come to the ground or on a piece of equipment or anything else, that voltage is now pushing the current that's flowing through there through the ground into rings of different electrical potential. When Bailey walked into that, he stepped across two different electrical potentials at the same time. Current now flows through him. The same thing just occurred. With that, that's exactly what it looks like on the surface. This is what it looks like in the ground. Now, I'm going to direct your attention to the truck passenger side door. The truck passenger side door. There are two people in this cab, a driver and a passenger. The passenger's wanting to get out, the driver's telling him to stay in. Watch what happens when the driver touches the ground and the truck at the same time. What did the driver do? He hopped out and continued to hop away. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Point, you're not going to get away from that. Electricity travels at 186,000 miles per second. Folks, if you know what the surface of the earth is, that means that electricity can travel almost 7.5 times around the surface of the earth that quickly. The point is, you're not going to get away from it. And by the way, 5.5 million miles of distribution lines, 18% of them in the ground, 4.6 in the air. If you know what the surface of the earth is in miles at the equator, which is 24,901 miles, divide that into 4.6 million miles, that's 181 times around the surface of the earth. And it's spread across the U.S., that right there. We cannot work day to day in metro, urban, or rural settings without having to work around these overhead power lines. And we have laws that tell how we can protect our coworkers, our equipment, our operators, and our companies from incidents that occur. With that, I'm going to lighten the load just a little bit. This is what you call stepping in high cotton.
Joke on his friend, Bob inadvertently discovered a perfect method to see whether or not your best friend is a wuss. Watch.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Y'all ready for this?
Heat on. Folks, talk about the devastation of storms and what it does on our infrastructure, causing outages across our cities, across our territories all the time. So we not only know that trees and high winds and storms cause a lot of problems, we also know that we have equipment that gets into these lines that cause outages. We have car pole accidents that cause outages. We have animals, and you can see many of them up on the trailer today, that cause outages. But what we don't talk a lot about is Mylar balloons and the devastation that they can cause from a reliability and safety aspect when kids are playing with these things or people let them go. What you're about ready to see is pretty impressive. Coming hot. Key off. Tom, Andy, could you help us out here? We're going to pass these balloons up each one of these stages here. Folks, what I'm going to share with you as they pass these balloons, I want you to notice that everywhere that current tracked across that balloon, take a look at the big screen, it took the paint off that balloon. Now the point of this demonstration is this. If electricity is always seeking its easiest, quickest path to its source, and that's the ground, if that's through you, it does not care. But you and I have a tendency to think of that as one pathway. When you look at these balloons, you will see that current travels hundreds of pathways to find its way to ground. Thank you, Tom, I appreciate it. With that, we talked about the 2,500 overhead strikes that occur every year. And while that may not seem like a lot, folks, if you think about the damage that causes, not just to equipment, reliability, but the burns and the injuries that those overhead strikes cause, you're about ready to witness that. Leo has a prototype Traco arm. And as he is maneuvering this prototype Traco arm, he gets a little bit too close. And when he gets a little bit too close, you're going to see what. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you this. That's what you want to happen. Because that fuse is a protective device on that circuit. It protected Leo the operator, it protected Leo's equipment, and hopefully it protected the asset as well as all the ground crews. But what we're about ready to show you is what will happen when that fuse does not recognize that fault current. The breaker at the substation looks at that fault current as additional load and keeps feeding it. Here we go. Now this is called a baby off. May not be too impressive to all you people down there because I'm going to tell you, we're running this off of generation. And we're dropping voltage, which affects the size of our arcs. But I'm also going to tell you this, that unless that fuse blows, or unless that substation breaker opens up, it's going to continue to eat and destroy whatever's in contact with it. Thank you, guys. Now, we talked about the law and the benefits of this protective cover. Folks, in most states and for most utilities, the application of that cover is free to residential customers and free to even commercial customers in certain states. I'm going to say it again. That's a free service in most states for most utilities. There's absolutely no reason that you directors, managers, and supervisors, when you're planning your work, aren't making a call to the utility that owns the lines that you're going to be working around and says, hey, is there any way you can come out and help us make this scene safe, this work site safe? And at a minimum, they're going to offer you up that cover-up. It's high vis, much larger around in diameter than the conductor itself. And should Leo have incidental contact, which he is, you can see that it is stopping the flow of those electrons, protecting Leo, the operator, the equipment, and also the asset. But folks, if you don't have that protection and you have incidental contact, you're putting a lot of asset, a lot of people at risk, including yourself, the operator. Nicely done, Leo. Thank you very, very much. As we look at this, we're going to bring a car out here. Thank you, guys. There's actually hundreds of thousands of carpool accidents that occur every year in the United States. Evergy's no different. It seems like every other day we are working up there, hearing about a car that hit a pole, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know how many people are up here and down here. There's a big bunch of you in here, but I guarantee you that probably 1 in every 20 people in this room is going to experience an equipment strike that drops a wire down on their equipment, or a car accident that's going to drop a wire down on your vehicle. When that time comes, folks, if you don't hear anything I say today, please listen to what I'm about ready to say. And you already know it. If there is no emergency for you to get out of that piece of equipment or that vehicle, that means if that piece of equipment or vehicle is not on fire, stay in the cab. Stay in the cab. Why? Because you're at the same electrical potential as that wire. You're at the same electrical potential as that wire that's up there if it's on your vehicle or your piece of equipment. If there's no reason for you to get out of that cab, stay in it. You're the bird on the wire. But if you have to make the decision to get out because of fire, there's a way to do that safely. Get to the lowest, most threshold of that vehicle, car, truck, van, Jeep, doesn't matter. Get to the lowest, most step or ladder on your pieces of equipment. If it's a traco, get out onto the track, walk to the end, get to the lowest, most point so that you can narrow that distance to the ground. As I am doing with this ladder, with both feet together, make sure you hug yourself. Our tendency is to stick our arms out for balance. Folks, we're not in the National Standing Broad Jump Championship. You don't have to jump far, you just have to clear the rig. As you jump out, continue to hop away. And the reason why that is important is because every time you hop with your feet together, you're at one electrical potential, current can't flow. If I just hopped out of this rig and in my excitement, I forget about that voltage gradient and I take a step across two different potentials, current now is going to flow through me. And if you've ever swatted a fly on a windowsill and watched it drop, that's how quickly that will happen. So continue to hop at least 30 feet away. Why 30? Not just national standards, folks. They know that to be the average distance of safety away from distribution voltages. Distribution voltages in our most systems is anything under 34,000 volts. That distance is 100 feet for transmission voltages. So again, understand what you need to do if you're in that situation, and you will remain safe and able to go home the same way that you came to work that day. We're getting ready to show you step potential. Let me show you what happens if you touch two different potentials at the same time. Direct your attention to that tub over there. Jim jumps off of that Jeep, and the moment he takes a step, current flows through him. Again, notice that he's on the Jeep. He makes the decision to jump off. He takes a step, current now is flowing through the ground into him. One more time, take a look. He jumps off. He takes a step. Current comes out of the ground into his body. It's already over with. Nicely done, guys. Thank you. If you have to jump off, you do it with both feet together. And how far away do you need to go before you're in safety? All right, now, there's some of you that already is thinking to yourself, can't you shuffle? Right? Not very good at that, am I? There is the key to shuffling correctly. And you need to hear me when I say this. With both feet together, press your heels into the ground. That means don't lift your heel, okay? Never allow the heel of one foot to pass the toe of the other. If you do that, you will remain at one electrical potential and safe. And again, the distance is the same, 30 feet. With that being said, I want to introduce you to a friend of ours. His name is Needamore. Needamore Training. And he's going to show you what happens. Hey, Jim, let me borrow that board real quick. Thank you. Folks, this is just a pallet board. Now, I'm going to tell you how many of you that's seen the PowerPoint picture a little bit ago has taken a wood shovel handle or a rake handle and did the very same thing. Or you took a piece of 2x4 or pallet board and you stuck underneath that wire and you pushed it out of the way so you could get something underneath of it. Don't raise your hands, I don't want to know. I'm going to tell you the absence of anything bad happening to you did not mean that was safe for you to do. This pallet board is contaminated with carbon, dirt, and any time that you have carbon and dirt, it will allow current to track. As he touches that, I want you to notice something. That's primary voltage. We're going to do that again. We're going to do that again. That's primary voltage. He touches it with his Needamore's hand. He pushes that line out of the way, and you can clearly see current flowing through that pallet board. Folks, you're going to drop like swatting a flannel window seal. Now, the other thing, for you people, you linemen out there, that pallet board put 2.7 amps through Needamore. How many milliamps of that? How many milliamps is that? 2,700 milliamps? Is that right, Norm?
Yes.
Yes. 2,700 milliamps. Listen to what I'm about ready to tell you and impregnate it into your memory. It only takes 75 to 100 milliamps to stop your heart. Is there more than enough current flowing through Needamore, that pallet board, to kill Needamore? Clear. We have a nylon rope. And they're using this nylon rope to throw over that energized cable to move it, the energized conductor to move it out of the way. And I want you to know that's primary voltage. He's touching Needamore's hand. And the moment he does that, current is flowing through Needamore because he's that path to ground. Key off. I want to grab a hold of this right here, bring this into the camera. What does that say? That says 1.2 amps using a nylon rope. Folks, I'm going to tell you that nylon isn't a great conductor to electricity, but if it's contaminated with oil from your hands, any moisture, carbon, which you simply can get from the air, and or dirt, it will allow current to track. So it's not a good idea for you to do that. Now, you ready to go? Watch what happens when he touches the rope to the grapefruit. Key on. Clear. Coming hot. Very good, guys. Now, if I hadn't taken this off, we could have checked the amp reading, but I think by now you realize that using nylon, wood, shovel handles, rake handles, that sort of thing is not a good idea. We're going to show you a backfeed demo And I believe this is one of the greatest hazards that there is out there, not just to the line department, but to all the municipalities, to all the street workers who after the storm are clearing intersections, clearing streets, and there's lines down everywhere. I traveled down through Springfield coming over here to the complex, and I don't know what street I was on, but when I was looking overhead, it was a sea of overhead power lines. From primary to secondary, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what block I went through. There was just wires everywhere. The point is that when those things come down to the ground, folks, what's one of the first things that we do after the storm? We go out to assess the damage, do we not? And because your lights are off and your neighbor's lights are off and the lights across the street are off, these lines that are on the ground must be dead. Otherwise, people would have electricity. But as you guys pull into these neighborhoods and you get out of your truck and you hear generators running, your head better be on a swivel. Because not every one of those generators have the right throwback switches and disconnects to prevent backfeed. And all those lines that you're dancing around out there and pulling stuff off of and out from underneath of, if somebody starts that generator and fails to throw the breaker in their house, they've just put primary voltage back out on all those lines that are down in the yard. To demonstrate that, we're using the same rope. Doran's going to start this little generator right here. I want you to understand that pot, that high side pot, does not care which way the current's flowing through it. It's either going to step it up to primary voltage or it's going to step it down to household current. In this case, he takes a double male-ended cord, plugs it into the generator, the outside outlet of his house. That then sends that current to the high side pot. That pot moves it up to primary voltage. You're out in your yard working. Watch what happens when you touch something that is energized and you may not even see the wire. Go ahead. Touch the grapefruit too. You can clearly see it's put primary voltage back up on that line. Now folks, listen to me. We're not telling you you can't run a generator. Don't misunderstand our message. We're saying that if you choose to do that, go inside your house to the main breaker and shut the main off. When you shut the main off, you just prevented backfeed from going out onto all those lines that are down in the yard. And now when you're cleaning up, you can see that it stops and prevents that from occurring. Don't be the one that caused an injury to your neighbor 4 houses, 4 blocks, or 4 miles down on your circuit, simply because you didn't shut the main off. Thank you guys very, very much. Good job. By the way, we got 1.2 amps from the backfeed of that generator using the nylon rope. All right, moving forward. Can I take this jumper off now, Dawn? Okay, thank you. By the way, the jumper is our reference to ground. Next time we do this, we're going to put a hot dog on there so you can see what happens to human tissue. Now folks, you see we brought out an aluminum ladder. I'm going to tell you already this year in our system alone, we've had 4 or 5 of these things, and they never end up good. And we're not unique as Evergy. I guarantee you every utility that is represented here has accidents involving ladders. The thing of it is that these people pull these 2- and 3-stage ladders up, like tree trimmers, roofers, and painters, and people who are hanging as Christmas lights. And they only have to move this ladder 8 feet. They don't want to have to bring all those stages down, so they just grab a hold of it, and they try to move it. And when that happens, they lose control over it, and guess where it ends up? In the primary phase. Here we go. They introduce it to the primary, they bring it back to Nina Moore's hand, and guess what? there was enough fault current when he touched that primary line that the fuse recognized that fault and opened up. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is very probable that that happened. But we're going to see what happens when it doesn't. Focus in on the hot dog. Key on. Clear. They introduced it to that primary phase. Jim brings it back to Needamore's hand. You can clearly see he's the pathway to ground. And when that happens, devastation occurs. Key off. As we bring this out to you, you can clearly tell that in about 1.5 seconds. Current traveling through 186 miles an hour through my bone and tissue caused my tissue to swell so rapidly it caused devastating tissue injury. Again, we do not want to recover from something like that. Folks, the next demonstration that we have for you is something that is critical for people who are going to be working the storm, maybe in areas that they're not used to using or used to being. And what they're doing is they're setting a trip saver sectionalizer, or what we call trip saver reclosure. Now, the reason why we're showing you this is because for any equipment operator that may be in a dig-in or may get their equipment into these lines and they see a bunch of sparks happening, fire, like you've seen the pyrotechnics today. But then pretty soon they quit. Well, some of our reclosures that are in our substation, folks, as they are programmed, there may be several minutes of delay by the time it recognizes the fault and opens up. And by design, after a certain number of minutes, we'll close again to see if whatever fault was in the circuit has cleared itself. The moment that reclosure closes back in, it's re-energized that line again, and if your equipment is still in contact with it, and it recognizes the fault, that reclosure will open up again. Again, after a certain amount of time, that reclosure will close again. That will happen 3 times. If that fault is still there in the third shot, it will remain open and de-energized. Why am I telling you that? If I'm operating this piece of equipment and that line, that sectionalizer opens up and it doesn't re-energize for a couple of minutes, that's enough time for me to exit out of that piece of equipment, to walk down that piece of equipment to where contact was made, and if I'm touching that piece of equipment and that reclosure closes back in, I'm going to be like the guy touching that trailer down there. I'm going to be part of that path to ground. So, we have sped this up for the sake of time. But if you can direct your attention to this tub, watch what happens. Clear. He hits that underground circuit. It opened up. The fault was still there, it opened up again. You'll notice that there is different times that occurred 3 times. Chester's backhoe was still in the circuit, and a part of that circuit, that reclosure recognized that as fault, opened up, closed, opened up, closed, and it was still there the 3rd time. It opened up and stayed open and dropped that fuse link. Folks, that's what reclosures do, and I'm going to tell you, if you ever get into an overhead or underground situation where you know that you've gotten into the circuit, unless there's an emergency, stay inside that piece of equipment until the utility gets there to tell you it's safe to exit. And the reason for that is that there's a reclosure on that circuit and you exit that piece of equipment equipment, you could be in that path of ground if you have the misconception that it has opened up and is dead. Now, Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to two spots here. Many of you in this room are required to wear 100% cotton as your base layer, or you're required to wear FR clothing like we are right now. If you are in your small communities or part of an emergency response group and you wear fire bumper gear, that is special material also. And we're going to illustrate that just because it's 100% cotton or FR or Kevlar Nomax does not mean that the material will not burn. You need to understand this, but we are going to show you the benefits of it in just a minute. So as these guys prepare for this, we're going to direct your attention using a cotton t-shirt across this back switch. Clear. Coming hot. As Jim essentially is crossing that cotton t-shirt across that cutout, you'll notice the red light. That tells you there's enough current flowing through the cotton to light the light up. That's a 100 watt light bulb, so we know that that's going to be 830 milliamps at a minimum. Watch what happens when he puts it across the phase. This would be if you had incidental contact. Go high, go high. Good. Now I want you to, the reason why I'm showing you that is you can clearly see that the material burned. But when he pulled that away, it didn't continue to flame and burn, worsening that contact injury. And that's the benefit of 100% cotton. We're going to do FR shirt. He puts this across that cutout. You can see the current is flowing. As he goes around to the back, he puts this across the phases, and once again, watch what happens. Go high, go high. Go there. Go high, one more time. There you go. Now when he pulls it away, notice it doesn't continue to flame and burn. That is significant if you're part of a contact, because that clothing will not worsen those contact injuries by continuing to burn and flame. Last one we want to show you is this bumper gear. This is morning pride for you guys in there that know a little bit about that. Just because it's Kevlar Nomax does not mean that it will not conduct. And when we put it across the phase, you can clearly see it lights up like a Christmas tree. If he removes it, it doesn't continue to burn, causing additional injuries. That is significant. Proximity detector. We do not endorse any of these. Okay? But I'm going to tell you what we issue to our employees, and we have found them to be quite reliable, and we got testimony after testimony of them saving people's butts. This is a V-Watch. They cost about $300. We'll probably get them cheaper if we search a little harder, but they're pretty easy to operate. They run off of 3 AAA batteries. The manufacturer says it's going to last you 6 months. We're going to tell you if you use them every day, that's not the trace, but you can clearly get usually 30 days out of them without any issues. You lift it up, it lights up yellow and red. It tells you that it's cycled and it's ready to go. Now folks, the idea behind these things is that if I don't know how to identify things on the circuit, or if it's night and I can't see, if I wear it on me, it has to be in your path of travel. It will give you 180 degrees of detection. So it will detect side to side. That barrier is 20 feet from the trailer. We're going to see if this can pick up some voltage. So I'm right at 20 feet. I'm trying to get this up there so you can hear it. Now folks, what that's telling me is that it's detecting voltage. Now if I turn this to the side, you can see that all of a sudden it started to light up faster and beep faster. If I turn this to the side right here, you can see that it's still detecting, again giving me 300 or 180 degrees of protection. Watch what happens when I turn my back to the voltage. It has to be in front of you. And if it's in front of you, it should detect that voltage. Now watch. Let's say that I ignore this. Once you see red, that is telling you that you're about ready to get your butt kicked. You're about ready to step on that voltage. You need to make sure that you pay attention to this and back away because you're about ready to walk into a voltage field. Now, I think Mr. Jerry has his own testimony of what happened to him one morning when it was dark and he was wearing one of these. He got to the corner of the house and this thing lit up like a Christmas tree. And he could tell you that he had no idea that he was about ready to walk on or step into a potential voltage field. These things are, again, $300 to save people's butts. If you don't have these and you are interested, this is a V-Watch. Get on the internet, check it out. Last thing that we want to share with you is this. You can see that we have a lot of animals on our trailer. Now, that being said, these all cause outages and cause problems. Before we get started, I can tell this young man right here, he wants to pet Spooky. Oh yeah, you do. Make him happy. Come on, make him happy. Oh, he loves to be petted. Now, what happens to Squeaky when he takes off? And he starts getting up on these internet servers. What happens? Hey, get out of here. You got a job to do. All right? Get out of here. Now, you guys tell me what happens. They're inquisitive animals. They can run around with these wires and that equipment all the time and nothing typically will happen to them. But unfortunately, because they get somewhere that they might they can touch two different potentials at the same time. And I wish I had a camera because I guarantee you 700 of you just went like this. Incredible. Alright, folks, on behalf of the Evergy presentation team, we are thankful for your service to the community in which we live and in which we try to do work. Thank you for your service. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Chad. Lavoie. Okay. Thank you, Chad. Close this out.
Wow, that was great. That's amazing. So in planning for this event, we started with safety, we're going to end the day with safety. And I'm Chad Lavoie. I'm actually the safety director for Kissa Construction in Kansas City, Missouri. We do a lot of underground utility work, power, not gas, typically water, sewer. This is an awesome demonstration. The people that are a part of putting this together is great. And it sparked some questions and thoughts from the safety director's point. And to break the ice, I'm just going to tell you that I think Tim and my kids proved that I was meant to be a safety guy because they called me a dream killer all the time. So my kids are no longer going to have $9 balloons. I figured that out in this deal, right? I just want to go over a couple of things when we talk about safety from the standpoint of how we plan our work, what we're doing. You guys go through a lot of training to do what you do every day. I don't know exactly what you guys do. I looked at it from a safety standpoint. But in this docudrama and in the emergency stuff you guys saw today, it sparks some thought that I want you guys to think about as you leave here. Where are we keeping our safety equipment? Where's our first aid equipment? Where's your rescue equipment? When's the last time you guys put your hands on? sure that it's ready to be used. When's the last time that you, your crew, or your organization actually did scenarios or drills to make sure that you knew how to use it and you were able to put it in use in case of a real life situation or emergency? What are your safety meetings like? What do you guys talk about? Are we checking the box just for safety meetings, JHAs, because this guy told you to do it? Think about some of these topics in your JHA meetings. What's today's work? What are the hazards associated with that work? And what are the controls? How are we going to eliminate and reduce the severity of those hazards that you guys deal with? One more thing I want to add to that conversation is what are the potential emergencies associated with the work you're doing? What's the plan? And what roles are we playing in that emergency environment when it does happen? Those are all questions that I think we should all ask ourselves as we're having those meetings, and I guarantee you the safety guy is not attending every single meeting that you guys have. Your people's best chance to survive an emergency is quick life-saving measures by your team, by the people on the ground before emergency services show up. Fire, police, and EMS don't do the work you guys do, and they're going to be looking to you to secure that scene and control the hazards that will impair their ability to render aid when they arrive. It's awesome to catch up with our people every day and talk about life, talk about personal life, talk about the work we're going to do. But the preparing and the planning and what we're going to do when the emergency does happen, that's an important part of every day that you guys deal with. And it is getting tougher in the environment you work in on how we navigate through the work and the processes. There's challenges that increase every day with what you do. So I appreciate your time, appreciate you guys being here. Please do not get up and leave yet. I believe Terry Baker has some things to give away. Thank you very much guys for your time. Appreciate you.